Attention all survivors. This isn't just another winter storm. The world as we know it is freezing over faster than anyone could have imagined. Good evening, citizens. If you're hearing this, it means you've survived the first wave of the storm. But this is just the beginning. What matters is that I'm here to guide you through this nightmare. Welcome to Emergency Broadcast Station 14, as of 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The National Weather Service has confirmed that temperatures across the northern hemisphere have plummeted to record-breaking lows. In some regions, it's colder than 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Entire cities are losing power. Transportation is at a standstill, and supplies they're running out. Let me be clear, this isn't just a cold front. This is the Ice Age, and it's here to stay. Here's what we know so far. The Arctic blast started less than 48 hours ago, but it's already engulfed half the continent. Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. Major cities are reporting widespread power outages. Highways are buried under snow drifts taller than most buildings. Rivers and lakes are freezing solid overnight. Rescue efforts are underway, but progress is slow. The National Guard is deploying emergency shelters, but their capacity is limited. If you're near one, get there while you still can. And for those of you in remote areas, I won't sugarcoat it. You're on your own for now. Stay indoors. Stay warm. And whatever you do, don't risk the cold. Frostbite sets in within minutes. Hypothermia, even faster. Reports are coming in from across the country. Witnesses describe scenes straight out of a disaster movie. Snow swallowing entire highways. Avalanches burying small towns. Families huddling together in cars, their engines running out of gas. And the most chilling part, the silence. No birds, no animals, just the wind. But listen closely. You're not alone. We're here and we'll stay on the air as long as this station holds. Now, let's talk survival. If you're still in a building with power, focus on conserving heat. Seal off unused rooms. Stuff towels or blankets under doors and windows. If you've got candles, use them. But be careful. Fire is a luxury we can't afford to lose. No power. Gather every blanket, every coat, every scrap of fabric you can find. Layer up. Body heat is your best chance of survival. And here's something most people don't think about: your car. It's not just transportation. It's a lifeline. If you can, park it near your home and use it as a temporary shelter. Just make sure to crack a window for ventilation. Carbon monoxide poisoning is the last thing you need right now. For those of you near the following locations, emergency shelters are operational, though I'll warn you, space is limited. Listen carefully. In California, shelters are open in San Diego, Bakersfield, and Fresno. In New York, head to Albany or Syracuse. If you're in the Midwest, I'm sorry. Resources are stretched thin. Your best bet is to hunker down and wait for updates. Wait. Hold on. I'm getting a new report. This can't be right. If you're in the Rockies, especially near Denver, evacuate immediately. A massive storm system is moving in. According to the data we have collected so far, 95% of the survivors still haven't subscribed. You should ensure that you are subscribed to keep getting all the latest updates on the apocalypse. Good evening, survivors. This is Emergency Broadcast Station 14. If you're just tuning in, the situation continues to deteriorate. The cold front we're facing isn't just a weather anomaly. It's a global disaster. Reports are flooding in from every corner of the country, and the picture is grim. The temperatures continue to plummet, with the worst still yet to come. What was once a localized phenomenon has spread across the entire continent. The polar vortex is now a permanent fixture in our atmosphere, and it's not backing down. Major cities are struggling to maintain basic services. Power outages are widespread, with no clear estimate on when they might be restored. The risk of frozen pipes is increasing, and hospitals are operating at full capacity, overwhelmed by frostbite cases and hypothermia. At this point, the most important thing is survival. If you're listening to this broadcast, you've made it through the worst of the initial freeze. But this is no time to relax. The next 48 hours will determine whether we can hold on or if the world as we know it will change forever. Let's get into the details of what's happening right now. In the northern states, temperatures have dropped to negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit in some areas. That's colder than Antarctica. We're seeing entire towns wiped off the map by blizzards and snowdrifts that are simply too deep to navigate. In the Midwest, the Great Plains are buried under feet of snow, and visibility is near zero. Most of the country is now in a state of emergency, with local governments issuing curfews and mandatory evacuations in certain regions. But here's the thing, evacuating might not be the best option for many of you. Roads are impassable, and the few routes that remain open are filled with stranded vehicles. If you're in one of these areas, stay put. You're better off sheltering in place. We're hearing reports from the Southwest that the situation is taking an unexpected turn. While the extreme cold is wreaking havoc in the north, the southern states are facing a different kind of crisis. The massive cold front is clashing with the remaining heat from the desert regions, creating unpredictable weather patterns. We're seeing violent snowstorms in places like Arizona and Nevada, and yes, wildfires are still a concern in certain areas. To make matters worse, the National Guard is stretched thin, and the military is being called in to assist with evacuation efforts in high-priority areas. But even they are facing challenges. Getting to survivors in remote locations is becoming nearly impossible. The weather is not cooperating. Helicopters are grounded, and convoys are getting stuck in snowdrifts. Now let's talk about the basics of survival. If you're still in a building with heat, keep it that way. Conserve every ounce of energy. If you've got a generator, use it sparingly. Don't waste fuel on anything non-essential. If you've lost power, stay warm. Layer up, use blankets, and seal off rooms you're not using. If you're in a car, keep the engine running if you can. But remember, carbon monoxide is a real threat. Crack a window to let fresh air in. And if you're in an area with active snowstorms or blizzards, visibility is your enemy. Stay indoors. Do not venture outside unless absolutely necessary. If you're forced to travel, make sure you're well prepared. A charged phone, extra clothing, and a way to signal for help if needed. Some of you might be wondering how long this will last. The short answer, we don't know. What we do know is that this is not a temporary cold snap. This is a new reality. It could take weeks, maybe months, for the global temperatures to stabilize. The scientists are still trying to figure out exactly what's causing this. Climate change, a new solar phenomenon. For now, all we can do is hold on and try to make it through each day. We're going to continue broadcasting as long as we can. If you're in a shelter or a safe space, stay tuned. We'll provide updates on emergency relief efforts and evacuation routes as soon as we get them. But for now, focus on staying warm and staying alive. Remember, help is on the way. We just have to survive long enough to see it. This is Emergency Broadcast Station 14, continuing coverage of the ongoing Ice Age event. If you're just tuning in, the cold front is spreading rapidly, and the situation is worsening by the hour. We've received more reports of entire communities becoming isolated, with roads impassable and power grids collapsing across the country. If you've managed to find shelter, stay there. Don't risk exposure. Right now, the main priority is survival. For those of you in urban areas, the situation is especially dire. Shelters are filling up fast and resources are limited. The government is doing what it can, but with so many areas affected, it's unclear when or if aid will arrive. You'll need to rely on your own resources as much as possible. Reports from the western states are starting to trickle in. In California, the snow has reached record levels, and the once temperate climate has been completely transformed. Entire towns have been buried under feet of snow. The authorities are working to clear the roads, but the snow is coming down too fast for them to keep up. In the mountains, avalanches are a serious threat, and if you're near the foothills, stay away from slopes. In the east, the situation is no better. The deep freeze has caused water mains to burst, and many homes are without running water. The cold has penetrated buildings, and pipes are freezing faster than crews can repair them. We're hearing from hospitals that they're overwhelmed with frostbite and hypothermia cases. If you're in need of medical attention, don't hesitate to reach out to local shelters or emergency services. Now, let's talk about the basics of survival. If you've got a fire source, use it wisely. Keep a safe distance from flammable materials, and remember that ventilation is key. If you're using a stove or lantern, make sure the area is well ventilated to avoid carbon monoxide buildup. Food is becoming scarce in many areas, and rationing is essential. If you've got canned goods, prioritize them. If you're able to hunt or gather food, be sure to do so safely. Avoid eating anything that could be contaminated by the cold or exposed to the elements for too long. And don't forget about water. If you've got access to a clean water source, use it sparingly. Boil any water you collect before drinking it to avoid contamination. If you're in an area with snow, melt it down for water, but always boil it first. As the days go on, more people are reporting that they've lost contact with loved ones. If you've got a way to communicate, keep trying to reach out. Don't give up. We're hearing reports of people who have been isolated for days, but they're surviving. They're finding ways to keep warm, stay fed, and hold on. This is the time to be resourceful. If you're hearing this broadcast, it means you've managed to find a way to survive this far. That's no small feat. Keep pushing forward. The cold will not last forever, but we need to endure. We need to make it through the worst of it. Now, let's talk about evacuation plans. We're hearing from emergency services that they're working to open up safe zones. But the routes are treacherous. If you're in a location that's still accessible, make your way to a shelter if possible. But be aware, many routes are blocked, and travel is becoming increasingly dangerous. If you're in an area that's too far gone, stay where you are and wait for further instructions. We've received reports of people attempting to leave their homes only to get stuck in snowdrifts. The cold is relentless, and it's too easy to get disoriented in these conditions. If you're on foot, stay close to your shelter and don't venture too far out unless absolutely necessary. Survival is the key right now. Keep your wits about you. You've made it this far, and that's something to be proud of. But the days ahead will be even more difficult. The cold will continue to press down, and the world will keep changing around us. But we have to stay strong. We have to keep pushing forward. Remember, you're not alone in this. People are surviving out there. People are making it through the worst of it. And so can you. This is Emergency Broadcast Station 14. If you're just tuning in, we're in the midst of an unprecedented Ice Age event. The cold front continues to spread, and conditions are worsening by the hour. The situation is dire, but you are not alone. Across the nation, people are finding ways to survive, and together, we will endure. Let's talk about resources. As you know, basic necessities like food, water, and warmth are becoming scarce in many areas. If you've already made it to a shelter, consider yourself fortunate. But for those still stranded or isolated, survival is going to depend on how you manage what you have left. First, food. Many of you have already started rationing, and that's a smart move. For those still able to hunt or forage, be cautious. While it's tempting to venture out, the cold is making it harder to track animals, and the terrain is treacherous. If you have access to any canned goods or dried foods, hold on to them. Remember, protein and calories are vital right now. Don't waste anything. If you're in a location with snow, it's important to know that it's possible to find plants, edible plants, but only if you know what to look for. Avoid eating anything that could be contaminated by the elements. If you're uncertain, it's better to wait than risk poisoning yourself. Water is just as critical. If you've got access to a water source, use it sparingly. Remember, the cold can freeze pipes and water supplies, and some of you may have already lost running water. If you're stuck in a location with snow, melting it for water is your best option, but it must be boiled first. Always boil water before drinking it to ensure it's safe. For those of you who are still on the move, be sure to have a plan for water collection. The cold can freeze anything that's left exposed, so keep containers covered and protected from the elements. If you're in an area with frozen lakes or rivers, breaking through the ice is dangerous. Avoid it unless you have no other option. Now, let's address the issue of warmth. If you're in a shelter, keeping it warm is paramount. Use any available materials to insulate your space. Blankets, coats, even furniture. Anything that can block out the cold and keep heat in. If you're using fire or a stove, be cautious. Keep a safe distance from flammable materials, and ensure your shelter is properly ventilated to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. Those of you in the wilderness or on the move need to be especially careful. Fires are essential for warmth, but they can also attract unwanted attention. If you're in a group, keep your fire small and manageable. Always extinguish it completely before moving on. If you're in a remote location, avoid lighting a fire unless absolutely necessary. The smoke can be seen for miles, and you don't want to alert others to your position. As the cold continues to spread, many of you may be noticing that it's becoming harder to keep up with the constant strain of survival. The physical toll is significant. Hypothermia is a real threat, and frostbite is claiming more victims by the day. If you're experiencing numbness or tingling in your extremities, take immediate action. Warm up slowly, but don't overdo it. Rapid rewarming can cause more damage than good. For those of you who have already lost fingers or toes to frostbite, medical help may not be available. Keep the affected areas clean and dry, and try to keep them covered and insulated. It's not ideal, but it's all you can do for now. The cold is unforgiving, and you need to take every precaution to protect yourself. Now, let's talk about communication. If you're listening to this broadcast, you've managed to stay connected in some way, and that's a lifeline. But for many, communication has become increasingly difficult. Phones and radios are losing signal, and satellite communication is becoming more unreliable as the storm intensifies. Keep trying to reach out to loved ones. If you've lost contact with someone, don't give up hope. The cold is affecting everyone, and it's possible they're just unable to reach you. If you're in an area with a radio or shortwave signal, continue to tune in for updates. We're doing everything we can to keep you informed, but the situation is changing fast. One final note for this interval: the situation is going to get worse before it gets better. The cold is relentless, and there's no sign of it letting up. But you've made it this far. You've survived, and that's something to be proud of. Hold on. Keep your head clear and stay focused. The days ahead will test your limits, but you're not alone. We're all in this together. Stay strong, and keep listening. We'll be back with more updates soon. This is Emergency Broadcast Station 14. We've just received reports that the cold front has reached unprecedented levels. The Ice Age event is intensifying, and many of you are facing extreme conditions. But we're not giving up. If you're listening to this, you're still here, and that's something to hold on to. Let's talk about the situation on the ground. For those of you in urban areas, the situation is critical. Power grids are failing across the country, and it's only a matter of time before many of you lose electricity. For those still fortunate enough to have power, conserve it. Avoid using unnecessary appliances, and keep your lights low. You'll need every bit of energy to stay warm. While the cold continues to spread, we're hearing reports of some areas beginning to stabilize. Shelters are being set up in key regions, and we've received word that some of the larger cities are organizing supply drops. These will be critical in the coming days. If you're in a shelter or a safe zone, stay put. Do not venture out unless absolutely necessary. The roads are dangerous and the weather is unpredictable. Now, I know many of you are struggling with the mental toll this event is taking. The isolation, the uncertainty, and the constant battle against the elements are wearing down even the strongest among us. But let me remind you, this is not the end. We've seen people come together in ways we never thought possible. Communities are forming in isolated areas, and individuals are reaching out to help one another. People are sharing supplies, offering warmth, and most importantly, they're offering hope. If you're feeling overwhelmed, remember you are part of something much larger. You're not alone in this fight. Let's shift gears for a moment. If you've managed to secure food and water, that's a huge win. But it's important to keep an eye on your mental health as well. The psychological impact of this event cannot be underestimated. If you're in a shelter or with others, take a moment to check in with those around you. A simple conversation can make all the difference. Even if you're alone, don't isolate yourself too much. Keep a routine, even if it's just checking in with the radio every few hours, or taking a moment to breathe and stretch. Your mind needs as much care as your body right now. If you've lost loved ones, or if you're grieving, it's okay to feel that pain. But remember, surviving is an act of resilience, and your resilience is what will get you through this. We've also received some good news. Military convoys are on the move. They're heading toward the worst hit areas to distribute resources and evacuate survivors. These convoys will be heavily guarded. So if you're in an area that's still accessible by road, try to make contact with local authorities. They're coordinating efforts to bring survivors to safety. For those of you in more remote locations, it's going to be more difficult to reach help, but keep your communication lines open. If you have access to a shortwave radio or any means of communication, keep trying to reach out. Help is coming even if it feels like it's taking too long. As for those of you still on the move, listen carefully. If you're in an area where the temperature has dropped below freezing, You need to be extremely cautious. The risk of frostbite and hypothermia is higher than ever, and the cold is relentless. One of the most dangerous things about this storm is how it can trick you. The cold doesn't always feel like it's getting worse, but it is. You might feel okay for a while, but the moment you stop moving, the cold can set in fast. If you're walking, keep your movements steady and constant. If you stop, find shelter and keep moving your limbs to stay warm. To those of you who have managed to make it to a safe location, hold tight. We're hearing that additional supply drops are being scheduled. These will include food, blankets, and medical supplies. However, there's no telling how long it will take for them to reach all areas. Be patient and stay vigilant. Remember, the cold is a silent enemy. It doesn't announce itself. It creeps in bit by bit until it's too late. That's why you need to keep your guard up, stay active, stay warm, and keep listening. Hope is still out there. Together, we can make it through this. We'll keep bringing you updates as soon as we receive them. This is Emergency Broadcast Station 14. We're now entering hour 6 of this extreme cold front, and the conditions are worsening. The storm has intensified, and the temperature has dropped even further. For those of you still out there, we urge you to seek shelter immediately. The freezing temperatures are not just dangerous, they're life-threatening. For those of you who've managed to find shelter, it's critical that you keep your heat source contained. If you've got a fire, keep it small and contained. Do not waste precious fuel. If you have a gas-powered generator, use it sparingly. These are precious resources, and we need to make them last. The cold is not just about discomfort anymore. It's about survival. Hypothermia and frostbite are becoming increasingly common. If you're out in the elements, your extremities are the first to go. Keep your fingers and toes covered. If you're able to, keep moving to stimulate circulation. Don't stop unless you're in a safe, sheltered place. Now, let's talk about food and water. Supplies are running low in many areas, and rationing is becoming a necessity. If you're in a shelter, conserve what you have. Water can be hard to come by, and if you're relying on snow for drinking water, remember that it's not as clean as you might think. Melt it before drinking, and if possible, boil it. If you have purification tablets, use them. Food is even more critical right now. If you're lucky enough to have a stockpile, ration it carefully. For those who are running out of food, keep an eye on your surroundings. There are reports of people in more rural areas finding wild game, but this is not something you can count on. If you're in a city, the chances of finding fresh food are slim, but there may be emergency food catches in your area. Keep looking. We've also received word that there are more supply drops scheduled. However, they will be limited, and they won't be able to reach every location. If you're near a known drop zone, make your way there as soon as possible. But remember, do not risk your life for supplies. The storm is still very dangerous, and the cold is relentless. For those of you who are stuck in vehicles, the situation is dire. The cold is seeping into the interiors of cars and trucks, and without heat, it's only a matter of time before it becomes too dangerous to stay inside. If you're in a car, make sure your engine is running only for short periods of time to conserve fuel. If you have blankets or sleeping bags, use them. Layer up and keep your head covered. Your body loses heat through your head faster than you might think. I know this is hard to hear, but we need to be real about the situation. The worst of the storm is still ahead of us. The ice age is not just an inconvenience, it's a catastrophe. The planet is changing before our eyes, and it's up to us to adapt. We can't rely on old methods of survival anymore. The world we knew is gone, but that doesn't mean we're done. We're hearing reports of people forming small groups, pooling resources, and working together. If you're alone, it's time to reach out. If you can't find anyone nearby, try to contact local authorities. They're working to organize evacuations, but they need your help. The more people who can get to a central location, the better. One thing that's becoming clear is that community is key. Those who are coming together are surviving. It's not just about having food and shelter. It's about having people who care for you and who you can rely on. If you're listening to this broadcast, you're already part of a larger community. You're not alone. Even if you're isolated, you're still part of something bigger. The world is changing, but that doesn't mean we've lost our humanity. If you can, reach out to others. Share what you have. It's the only way we'll make it through this. To everyone still out there, remember, survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about keeping your will to live strong. It's about finding purpose in a world that's been turned upside down. The cold may be closing in, but we're not finished yet. We'll keep you updated as soon as we have more information. Stay strong, stay warm, stay together. This is Emergency Broadcast Station 14. It's now hour 7 of this unprecedented cold front, and the situation remains dire. We've received reports of entire neighborhoods being trapped under layers of ice and snow with no immediate access to help. If you're listening to this, it means you've managed to survive the first wave of this storm, but I need to stress, this is only the beginning. Many of you are in situations where rescue isn't coming anytime soon. The cold is taking its toll, and we're hearing more and more stories of people trapped in their homes, unable to move due to the weight of the snow. If you're one of them, don't panic. The best thing you can do is conserve your energy. Stay as warm as possible. If you have any heat source, keep it going. If you're in a vehicle, keep the engine running in short bursts to prevent the gas from running out too quickly. Those of you who are still mobile, keep moving, but don't risk your life by venturing out in the storm. The winds are strong and visibility is near zero in many areas. It's tempting to go out looking for help or supplies, but the truth is, the storm is too unpredictable. It's better to stay put and wait for the conditions to improve, even if it feels like you're stuck. We've also heard reports of people starting to ration their food and water, but this is where things get tricky. As the storm drags on, your supplies may run out faster than you think. If you're down to your last reserves, don't eat them all at once. Your body needs time to adjust, and if you're already dehydrated, consuming too much too quickly could cause you more harm than good. For those of you who are still in cities, we're seeing some movement from local authorities. There are makeshift shelters being set up, but they're few and far between. If you're able to make your way to one of these shelters, do so. But remember, not everyone will make it. The shelters are overcrowded, and many of them are lacking the necessary resources to support large groups. If you're stuck in a shelter, conserve your energy and make sure your group is staying warm. At this point, the biggest danger is the cold itself. The storm may pass, but the freezing temperatures are likely to remain for days. We're hearing reports that some of you are already starting to experience frostbite. If you feel numbness in your fingers or toes, it's crucial that you take action immediately. Remove wet clothing, if possible, and keep your extremities warm. If you're with others, help each other out. The more hands you have, the better your chances of surviving this. We're also hearing from the more remote areas that some survivors are starting to make their way toward the mountains where they believe they'll find refuge. But let me be clear, this is not a safe option for most of you. The mountains are treacherous, and the weather conditions make it almost impossible to traverse. If you're planning to leave your shelter, make sure you have a clear route. If you don't, it's better to stay put. For those of you who are still in the cities, there's a chance that help could arrive within the next 24 hours. However, we need to be realistic. The roads are impassable, and even if aid is dispatched, it will take time. The best thing you can do right now is to stay calm, stay warm, and keep your wits about you. As for those of you who are alone, I know how difficult it is to keep going when it feels like no one is around. But I need you to hear me. You are not truly alone. There are millions of people across the country struggling just like you. We're all in this together, even if we can't physically be with each other. Your survival is important, not just for you, but for everyone who's still out there. We need each other to make it through this. Your mental strength is just as important as your physical endurance. If you're alone, try to keep a routine. Stay active, even if it's just a few minutes of movement every hour. Keep your mind sharp. If you have a way to communicate, keep trying. If you're able to reach out to anyone, do it. And if you can't, just know that there are others listening right now who are in the same boat. We've also received some concerning news about the infrastructure in several cities. Power lines are down, and in some areas, it's expected that electricity won't be restored for weeks. If you're relying on electrical heating or refrigeration, it's time to adjust your plans. If you're near a power source that's still functioning, try to conserve energy. If you're using a generator, keep it outside your shelter to avoid carbon monoxide buildup. Make sure to turn off lights and appliances you're not using. Every little bit helps. I know it feels like we're in the darkest part of this storm right now, but the truth is, we're only just beginning. The cold front is relentless, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. But we've survived worse. We've survived fires, floods, and earthquakes. We've survived as a society, and we will survive this. Keep fighting, keep pushing, and remember, we are in this together. Emergency Broadcast Station 14, Hour 8. The storm continues to rage, and the conditions are worsening. The cold is spreading faster than anticipated, and we're receiving reports of temperature drops reaching life-threatening levels. If you're listening to this, you need to prepare for the worst. This is no longer just a storm. It's a survival situation. The first signs of frostbite are becoming more widespread. If you're outside, check your fingers, toes, and ears regularly. If they begin to turn pale or numb, you need to act immediately. The last thing you want is to lose extremities to the cold. If you have access to medical supplies, use them. If not, keep your body as warm as possible. Layer up, use any clothing you can find. It's not about looking good right now. It's about surviving. Some of you are still trapped in your homes, unable to move due to the heavy snow. If you can hear me, please listen carefully. If you're stuck, don't attempt to dig yourself out unless you're absolutely sure it's safe. The snow is compacting quickly, and there's a risk of collapse. Wait for the storm to pass before trying to make your way out. But if you're running low on supplies, it's better to attempt a controlled evacuation than to stay put and risk starvation. We've received reports that several cities are now completely cut off from the outside world. No roads, no power, no communication. If you're in one of these areas, you need to prepare for extended isolation. The government is doing what it can, but resources are stretched thin. For those of you in more remote areas, there's a chance that help won't arrive for days, if not weeks. It's crucial that you ration your food and water. Every drop counts. Local authorities are setting up emergency shelters in some cities, but they're already overwhelmed. If you're near a shelter, it may be your best option to get to one, but do so with caution. The roads are dangerous, and the weather will only continue to worsen. If you're not able to make it to a shelter, stay inside, stay warm, and conserve your resources. The storm will pass, but it's unclear how long it will take. At this point, survival isn't just about food or water. It's about mental endurance. If you're isolated, it's easy to lose hope. But I need you to hear me. You are not alone. There are thousands, if not millions, of people out there facing the same challenges. We are all in this together. You may not see it, but there is a community out there. People who are struggling just like you. People who are doing everything they can to survive. And together, we will make it through. We're hearing reports of increased animal activity in some areas. The storm is pushing wildlife into urban areas, looking for shelter and food. If you're in a city or suburban area, be cautious. Don't leave food out, and be aware of your surroundings. The cold is driving animals into places they wouldn't normally go. If you encounter one, stay away. They're just as desperate as we are right now. The ice is beginning to shift. We're seeing signs of structural damage in some buildings, and the risk of collapse is real. If you're in a building that's showing signs of strain, move to a lower floor or away from windows. The weight of the snow and ice is causing roofs to cave in, and we've already received reports of collapsed buildings in some areas. If you're in a stable location, stay there. But if you're in a structure that's beginning to give way, it's time to leave if possible. At this point, we need to face the facts. This storm is unlike anything we've seen before. It's relentless, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. But we have to keep pushing forward. We have to keep surviving. And that means staying focused, staying calm, and staying smart. Don't give in to panic. Don't let the cold take you. You're stronger than this. We all are. We're hearing that some of you are beginning to form small groups in your shelters. And that's a good thing. If you can, stay with others. There's strength in numbers, and together you'll have a better chance of surviving this storm. But remember, if you're in a group, keep a level head. Don't let fear dictate your actions. Work together. Look out for each other. Share what you have. And above all, stay warm. We've been through disasters before. Earthquakes, floods, fires. But this is something different. It's a test of our endurance, our resilience, and our will to survive. And I know we can do it. We've made it through worse. We've come together as a community in the face of adversity, and we will do it again. We will survive this. We have no other choice. Stay strong. Stay smart. And remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together. Emergency Broadcast Station 14, Hour 9. The storm is intensifying and the situation has taken a dire turn. Temperatures have dropped to unprecedented lows in many areas, and we're receiving reports of entire towns disappearing under the snow. If you're still listening, know that you are one of the fortunate ones who can still hear this broadcast. That means you have a chance. Hold on to that. To everyone sheltering in place, here's what you need to do now. First, check your windows and doors. Shield any gaps with towels, blankets, or even clothing to keep the cold out. If you have access to candles or a small heat source, use them, but do so safely. The risk of fire is high in these conditions, and emergency services may not be able to reach you if something goes wrong. We've received reports from the northern regions. Entire forests are freezing solid. Trees are collapsing under the weight of the ice, and wildlife is succumbing to the cold. This isn't just a storm, it's a freeze that's rewriting the landscape. If you're in a wooded area, be cautious of falling trees. They can come down without warning, and the damage can be catastrophic. For those of you in urban areas, the situation is equally grim. Power grids are failing, water lines are freezing. If you still have access to electricity, use it sparingly. Charge your devices, if possible, and conserve battery power. Communication is key right now. Editor, and losing it could mean the difference between life and death. We've been informed that the military is deploying additional resources to aid in evacuation efforts, but the sheer scale of this storm is making their job nearly impossible. Roads are impassable, air travel is grounded, and even the most advanced equipment is struggling to operate in these conditions. If you're waiting for rescue, be prepared for delays. It may take days before help arrives. Survival tips for those still braving the elements. If you must go outside, cover every inch of exposed skin. Frostbite can set in within minutes at these temperatures. Move slowly and carefully. Ice can form beneath the snow, making every step a potential hazard. And if you're traveling, leave markers behind you. Snow can quickly erase your tracks, and you don't want to lose your way. I know many of you are feeling the weight of isolation right now. The storm has cut us off from each other in ways we've never experienced before. But I need you to remember something. Isolation doesn't mean abandonment. There are people out there who care about you, who are thinking of you, even if you can't hear their voices. You are not forgotten. For those of you with families, hold on to each other. Use this time to stay close, to keep each other warm, both physically and emotionally. If you're alone, keep your mind occupied. Read, write, draw. Do whatever you can to stay mentally engaged. The mind is just as vulnerable as the body in these conditions, and keeping it active is crucial. We're also hearing reports of strange phenomena. Lights in the sky, unusual sounds carried by the wind. Scientists believe these are natural occurrences caused by the extreme weather, but they're a reminder of just how little we truly understand about the forces we're dealing with. Stay focused on what you can control. The unknown can wait. To those of you still listening, I want you to take a moment. Breathe. Feel the air in your lungs, the beat of your heart. You're alive. That's no small thing right now. Every breath you take is a victory. Every moment you endure is proof of your strength. Don't lose sight of that. You are stronger than this storm. The storm may feel endless, but it's not. It will pass. And when it does, we will rebuild. We will find each other again. And we will remember those we've lost as victims, but as reminders of why we fight to survive. Hold on to that thought. Let it carry you through the night. Stay warm. Stay safe. And remember, you are not alone. We're all in this together, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. We'll get through this, one breath at a time. This is Emergency Broadcast Station 14. It's hour 10 of the Arctic storm crisis, and the reports we're receiving paint a grim picture. Entire regions are succumbing to the freeze, and the cold is spreading faster than anticipated. For those just tuning in, stay with us. This broadcast may be your lifeline. Here's what we know. The storm's epicenter has shifted south, engulfing cities that were previously on the periphery. Los Angeles is reporting snowfall for the first time in decades. But this isn't a picturesque winter wonderland. Streets are buried under feet of ice. Power grids are failing, and the temperature continues to plummet. If you're in the affected areas, do not venture outside unless it's absolutely necessary. Military units are working tirelessly to maintain order and provide aid. We've received confirmation that evacuation routes are still operational in certain regions, but conditions are worsening rapidly. If you're planning to evacuate, do so immediately. Waiting any longer could mean being trapped as the storm closes in. For those unable to evacuate, your focus should be on survival. Keep all heat sources centralized in one room. Block off unused spaces to conserve warmth. If you have access to generators, ration your fuel carefully. And remember, hydration is just as important as warmth. Dehydration can set in faster than you realize in cold environments. We've also been informed of a troubling development: supply shortages. Relief efforts are being hampered by impassable roads and grounded aircraft. If you're waiting for aid, it may take longer than expected to reach you. Share resources with your neighbors if you can. Community cooperation will be key in the days ahead. Now for an important safety update. Ice sheets are forming on rivers and lakes at an alarming rate. Do not attempt to cross them, even if they appear stable. The ice may not be as solid as it seems, and falling through could be fatal. Stick to known paths and avoid waterways entirely. I want to take a moment to address those of you who are listening alone. Isolation can be one of the most difficult aspects of survival. The silence, the stillness, it can play tricks on your mind. But remember, you're not truly alone. There are others out there, just like you, listening to this same broadcast. You're part of a network of survivors, a community bound by resilience. Hold on to that thought. For families and groups sheltering together, lean on each other. Share your stories, your memories. Keep the conversation going. The storm may be cold, but your words can bring warmth to the room. Never underestimate the power of connection, even in the darkest times. We've also received reports of strange atmospheric phenomena. Lights in the sky, bursts of color that seem to ripple across the clouds. Scientists believe this is caused by the extreme weather conditions interacting with the upper atmosphere. It's a reminder of the storm's immense power, and a stark warning of what we're up against. To everyone listening, stay vigilant, stay strong. This storm is testing us in ways we never imagined, but we are not powerless. Every decision you make, every precaution you take, is a step toward survival. Don't let fear dictate your actions. Let it sharpen your instincts instead. Remember, this isn't just about surviving the storm. It's about what comes after. The world will look different when the ice melts, but we'll still be here. We'll rebuild, we'll adapt, and we'll carry the lessons of this storm with us, so we're better prepared for whatever comes next. Until the next update, stay safe. Keep moving forward, one step at a time. And remember, you're stronger than you think. You've already survived so much. Don't stop now. This is Emergency Broadcast Station 14. As we enter the 11th hour of this unprecedented crisis, the storm continues to tighten its icy grip. The latest reports confirm what many of you have already felt. Temperatures are plummeting to record lows. For those still in affected regions, this is your reminder to prioritize insulation and warmth above all else. Hypothermia can set in within minutes under these conditions. Updates from the Northern Territories paint a dire picture. Entire towns are being swallowed by snowdrifts, with some areas reporting accumulations of over 10 feet. Rescue efforts are underway, but progress is slow and treacherous. If you're trapped, do everything you can to make your location visible. Bright fabrics, flashing lights, anything to catch a rescuer's attention. Military teams are working tirelessly to maintain evacuation corridors. We've received confirmation that Route 47 remains operational for the next 6 hours, but conditions are deteriorating rapidly. If you're near this route, leave now. I repeat, leave now. Do not wait for further instructions. The window is closing. For those unable to evacuate, it's crucial to establish a safe zone within your shelter. Concentrate heat sources in one area and seal off unused spaces to conserve energy. If you have access to thick blankets, clothing layers, or even newspapers, use them to insulate yourself. Remember, survival isn't about comfort, it's about endurance. We've also received reports of frostbite cases rising sharply. If you or someone in your group is experiencing numbness, discoloration, or a loss of sensation in extremities, act immediately. Warm the affected area gradually. Do not use hot water or direct heat, as this can cause further damage. Time is critical in these cases. Community reports continue to come in, and I want to share one that stood out. A small neighborhood in the outskirts of Denver has come together, pooling resources and building a shared shelter to weather the storm. They've set up a system of rotating firekeepers to ensure warmth is maintained around the clock. It's a testament to the power of unity in the face of adversity. If you're listening and you feel isolated, remember this: you're not alone. Thousands, perhaps millions, are tuning in right now, hearing these same words, sharing this same struggle. Survival isn't just a physical act, it's a mental one. Keep your mind sharp, your spirit steady. The storm is relentless, but so are we. Let's talk about food and water. Supplies may be running low for many of you, but rationing is key. Stretch your resources as far as possible. If you have access to snow, remember to melt and boil it before consumption to avoid contamination. Avoid consuming snow directly. It will lower your core temperature and accelerate dehydration. An important reminder: avoid overexertion. Shoveling snow, moving heavy objects, or even prolonged exposure to the cold can lead to exhaustion or worse. Pace yourself. Your energy is as vital a resource as your food and water. Conserve it whenever possible. As we approach the final hours of this broadcast, I want to emphasize one thing: resilience. Every challenge you face, every obstacle you overcome, is a testament to your strength. The storm may rage on, but it cannot last forever. Hold on to that thought. The ice will thaw, the skies will clear, and when they do, we'll rebuild together. To those of you who've stayed with us hour after hour, thank you. Your perseverance is remarkable. This storm is testing us in ways we never imagined, but we are proving moment by moment that we are capable of enduring. Hold the line, stay safe, and remember, you're stronger than you think. This is Emergency Broadcast Station 14, and if you're still with us, I want to start by acknowledging your strength. The past 12 hours have been nothing short of extraordinary, and your resilience in the face of this relentless storm is a testament to the human spirit. But we are not out of danger yet. The storm is reaching its peak, and the hours ahead will be the most critical. Latest reports indicate that temperatures in the northern regions have hit an unprecedented low of -70 degrees Fahrenheit. Power grids are failing across multiple states, leaving millions without heat or light. For those affected, it's imperative to conserve what little energy you have left. Gather your household into one room, seal off any drafts, and use blankets, clothing, and even furniture to create insulation. The military has issued a final update. Evacuation efforts are now focused solely on priority zones. If you are in one of these areas, you'll hear sirens and see flashing lights indicating the presence of rescue teams. For those outside these zones, I won't sugarcoat it, the situation is dire. But survival is still possible. Stay put, stay warm, and stay calm. Let's talk about food and water one last time. By now, many of you are running on empty. If you've exhausted your supplies, remember that snow can be melted and boiled for water, but avoid consuming it raw. For food, ration carefully and avoid unnecessary exertion. Every calorie counts. If you've managed to secure canned goods, remember to check for expiration dates and consume the most perishable items first. Reports from Denver suggest that community shelters are holding strong. One group of survivors has managed to construct a makeshift heating system using salvaged car batteries and insulated tubing. It's these acts of ingenuity and collaboration that remind us of what we're capable of, even in the darkest times. To those of you listening alone, you are not forgotten. This broadcast is proof that there are others out there, enduring the same trials, fighting the same battles. If you're feeling isolated, remember that every breath you take, every decision you make to survive, is a beacon of hope for the rest of us. You are part of something greater, a collective will to endure. Now, a word of caution. As the storm intensifies, structural integrity is becoming a major concern. Roofs are collapsing under the weight of ice and snow, and roads are buckling from the extreme cold. If you hear creaking or shifting sounds within your shelter, move to the most secure area immediately. Avoid basements, as flooding from burst pipes is becoming increasingly common. Finally, a message to all survivors: this storm will pass. It may feel endless, but it is not. The ice will thaw, the skies will clear, and when they do, we will rebuild. Hold on to that thought. Let it anchor you through these final hours. Survival is not just about enduring the storm. It's about believing in the dawn that follows. Before we sign off, I want to leave you with this. Humanity has faced countless challenges throughout history, and each time we've emerged stronger. This storm is no different. It's a test, a brutal one, but one we are capable of passing. Stay strong, stay warm, and remember, you are not alone. This is Emergency Broadcast Station 14 signing off. May you find warmth, safety, and hope in the hours to come.